Welcome to the Sleep Files. Today's story is Night of the Blood Moon, a twisted version of Romeo and Juliet. The neon lights of downtown Verona City cast sickly shadows across the rain-slicked streets where two ancient bloodlines had waged war for centuries, not over territory or honour, but over something far more primal, the right to hunt. The Montagues were vampires, elegant predators who fed with surgical precision, viewing themselves as the aristocracy of the undead. They controlled the upscale districts, their victims chosen carefully from the wealthy elite who wouldn't be missed for days. Across the industrial wasteland of the lower city, the Capulets ruled as werewolves, savage and territorial, their kills messy and brutal, leaving behind shredded corpses that the corrupt police force wrote off as animal attacks. For 300 years, an uneasy truce had kept the species separated by the Styx River that bisected the city. But on the night of the blood moon, when both clans' powers reached their peak, that fragile peace would shatter. Romeo Montague pressed his pale fingers against the grimy window of the abandoned warehouse, watching the crimson orb rise over the city skyline. At 19, he was young for a vampire, turned only 2 years ago after a car accident that should have killed him. His father, Lord Montague, had saved him with the dark gift, but Romeo still struggled with the monster he'd become. Unlike his kin, he took no pleasure in the hunt, feeding only when absolutely necessary and never killing his victims. "You're brooding again," came a voice from behind him. Mercutio, his closest friend and fellow vampire, approached with his characteristic swagger. Where Romeo was introspective and melancholy, Mercutio embraced their nature with gleeful abandon. "The blood moon rises, cousin. Tonight we feast like kings." "I'm not hungry," Romeo muttered, though the gnawing ache in his chest suggested otherwise. The blood moon always intensified their cravings. "Not hungry?" Mercutio laughed, his fangs glinting in the moonlight. "Then you're either lying or dying. Come, the others are gathering at the old cathedral. Benvolio says there's a pack of Capulets planning to cross the river tonight. We'll show them what happens when dogs venture into vampire territory." Romeo's enhanced hearing picked up the distant howl echoing across the city, long, mournful, and achingly beautiful. Something stirred in his chest, a longing he couldn't name. What if we're wrong about them? What if they're not all monsters? Mercutio's expression darkened. "They're werewolves, Romeo. Savage beasts who kill for sport. They murdered my sister, remember? Tore her apart and left her pieces scattered across Founders Park." His voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "Never forget what they are." But Romeo was already walking away, drawn by an inexplicable pull toward the river. Behind him, Mercutio's curses faded into the night. On the other side of the city, Juliet Capulet stood atop the ruins of the old steel mill, her human form silhouetted against the blood moon. At 17, she was the youngest of her pack, but her wolf was strong, stronger than many of the older males who challenged her father's leadership. Her transformation had come early, triggered by trauma when vampire raiders had attacked their den 5 years ago, killing her cousin Rosaline. "Juliet." Her cousin Tybalt's voice carried on the wind as he bounded up the twisted metal stairs in his half-transformed state, claws scraping against steel. "Father wants you back at the den. Tonight's too dangerous for you to be alone." She turned to face him, her eyes already beginning to glow with inner fire. "I'm not a pup anymore, Tybalt. I can handle myself." "Against vampires?" On the blood moon? Tybalt's form rippled, muscles bulging as his wolf fought for dominance. They'll be at their strongest tonight. Their speed, their strength will be matched by ours, Juliet interrupted. The moon calls to me, cousin. I can feel something changing. Tonight feels different. Tybalt studied her with golden eyes. As her father's nephew and the pack's enforcer, he'd sworn to protect her, but he also recognised the alpha potential burning within her. Then I'll come with you. No. The command in her voice surprised them both. This is something I need to do alone. Before he could protest, she leaped from the platform, her body shifting mid-air. Bones cracked and reformed, muscles expanded and silver fur sprouted across her skin. She landed on 4 paws and bounded into the night, leaving Tybalt's frustrated howl echoing behind her. The Styx River ran black under the blood moon, its waters carrying the industrial runoff that had poisoned it for decades. Romeo stood on the vampire side of the bank, drawn by an instinct he couldn't understand. The ancient stone bridge loomed before him, its Gothic arches casting twisted shadows on the water below. A splash echoed from the opposite shore, and Romeo's enhanced vision caught movement in the darkness. A massive silver wolf emerged from the shadows, its coat gleaming like liquid mercury in the moonlight. The creature was beautiful and terrible, its eyes burning with intelligence that was distinctly human. Their gazes met across the water, and Romeo felt something shift in his chest. A recognition that went deeper than species, deeper than the centuries of hatred between their kinds. The wolf tilted its head, studying him with an intensity that made his dead heart ache with phantom beats. Slowly the wolf began to change. Bones cracked and reformed, fur receded, and within moments a young woman stood where the beast had been. She was breathtaking. Wild, dark hair, olive skin marked with ritual scars, and those same burning eyes that had captivated him in wolf form. "You're not supposed to be here," she called across the water, her voice carrying easily in the still night air. "Neither are you," Romeo replied, stepping closer to the water's edge. "I'm Romeo." "Juliet?" She moved to the bank on her side, mirroring his position. "You're a Montague. And you're a Capulet." He should have been reaching for the silver blade at his belt, should have been calling for backup. Instead, he found himself stepping onto the bridge. "Are you going to kill me?" She laughed, a sound like silver bells mixed with a wolf's howl. "Are you going to try to drain me dry?" "I don't kill," Romeo said, continuing his slow walk across the bridge. "Not anymore." "Neither do I." Juliet stepped onto her side of the bridge, meeting him in the middle. "Not unless I have to." They stood facing each other in the centre of the ancient span, the blood moon hanging directly overhead like a crimson eye. Up close, Romeo could see the pain in her eyes, the same haunted look he saw in his own reflection. She was beautiful and dangerous, a predator like himself, but there was something else, a gentleness that her savage nature couldn't quite hide. "Your kind killed my cousin," Juliet said softly but without accusation. "Your kind killed my friend's sister," Romeo replied, "but I don't think either of us pulled those triggers." "No," she agreed, "we're just caught in the crossfire of a war we didn't start." Romeo reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his pale fingers brushed against her warm cheek. The contact sent electricity through both of them. Vampire and werewolf, natural enemies drawn together by something stronger than instinct. "This is impossible," Juliet whispered, but she didn't step away. "Most beautiful things are," Romeo said, leaning closer. "We shouldn't—" "No, we shouldn't." But her hand came up to cover his, pressing his palm against her face. "My father would kill you. Your father would kill me." "Then we won't tell them." Their lips met in the shadow of the blood moon, and the kiss was electric. Fire and ice, predator and predator, finding something neither had expected. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Meet me tomorrow night," Romeo said urgently. "The old cemetery on neutral ground." Juliet nodded, already stepping back toward her side of the bridge. "If we're caught—" "We won't be." But even as he said it, Romeo heard the distant sound of motorcycles, his family's hunting party, heading toward the bridge. Juliet's enhanced hearing caught it too. Her form began to ripple, preparing to shift. "Until tomorrow," she said, and then she was running, her body transforming mid-stride until a silver wolf disappeared into the industrial maze of Capulet territory. Romeo made it back to his side just as Mercutio and the others roared up on their bikes, leather-clad and hungry for violence. "Any sign of the dogs?" Mercutio called out, his fangs already extended. "Nothing," Romeo lied smoothly. "The bridge is clear." But as they rode back toward Montague territory, Romeo's enhanced senses caught a familiar scent lingering in the air. Wild roses and moonlight, the scent of the wolf who had stolen his heart. The next night, Romeo waited in the old cemetery, pacing between weathered headstones that dated back to the city's founding. Verona City's neutral ground was a strip of land between territories where neither clan held sway, protected by ancient agreements and older magic. The dead here belonged to both sides, and to neither. Juliet emerged from the shadows like a ghost, still in human form, but moving with predatory grace. She wore a simple black dress that made her look like a mourner, but her eyes burned with life. "You came," Romeo said, relief flooding through him. "I almost didn't." She moved to stand before a particular grave, a small headstone marked Rosalind Capulet, beloved daughter. "I kept thinking about all the reasons this is wrong." Romeo joined her, reading the dates. She was young. 15. She was going to be mated to Paris Aeschylus, the neutral pack leader's son. It would have brought peace between our pack and the neutrals. Juliet's voice was thick with old grief. Instead, she died screaming in an alley, drained of blood. "I'm sorry," Romeo said, and meant it. "I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry." "Your people have their own graves here," Juliet observed, gesturing to a section marked with the Montague crest. "We've all lost someone." They walked among the headstones, sharing stories of the dead, friends, family, innocents caught in the crossfire of an ancient war. With each tale, the space between them seemed to shrink until they were walking side by side, their hands occasionally brushing. "Tell me about your transformation," Romeo said as they sat on a stone bench beneath a gnarled oak tree. Juliet was quiet for a long moment. "I was 12. We were living in the old warehouse district then, before Father claimed the steel mill. A group of vampires attacked during the day, when most of the pack was sleeping." Her voice grew distant. "They killed 3 of our pups. I watched them drain my friend Marcus while I hid in a shipping container." "The trauma triggered your first change?" "The rage did." Her eyes flashed gold in the darkness. "I shifted for the first time and tore out the throat of the vampire who killed Marcus. I was just a child, but my wolf was already strong." She looked at him. "What about you? How did you die?" Romeo told her about the car accident, about waking up in his father's mansion with fangs and an insatiable thirst. "I tried to refuse the blood at first. Thought I could starve myself back to humanity. But you can't fight what you are." "No," he agreed, "but you can choose how to be what you are." They met the next night, and the next. Each encounter deepened their connection, vampire and werewolf finding solace in shared understanding. They were both monsters, but they were monsters who chose mercy over violence, love over hate. On the fourth night, Romeo brought a picnic of sorts, wine for himself. He could still enjoy the taste, even if it provided no nourishment, and rare steaks for Juliet. They spread a blanket among the graves and talked until dawn threatened the horizon. "I've been thinking," Juliet said, curled against Romeo's chest as he stroked her hair. His body was cold, but she found comfort in his stillness, the way he didn't fidget or shift like the warm-blooded. "About what you said, about choosing how to be what we are." "What about it?" "What if we chose to be together? Really together, not just these stolen moments." Romeo's hand stilled. "Juliet, you know that's impossible. Our families—" "Would kill us both, yes." She sat up, her eyes fierce with determination. "But what if we left? There are other cities, places where the old feuds don't reach. We could start over. Run away together." The idea was tempting, terrifyingly so. Leave everything behind. What is there to leave? A war we didn't start? Families who see us as weapons instead of children? Juliet's voice grew passionate. "I'm tired of being defined by what I am instead of who I am. Aren't you?" Romeo pulled her close, breathing in her scent. "Where would we go?" "North. I've heard there are packs in Canada that live peacefully with vampire covens. They've found ways to coexist." She kissed his throat, right over where his pulse should have been. "We could find a way." "It would be dangerous if they caught us before we reached the border." "Then we'd die together instead of living apart." Juliet's eyes met his. "I love you, Romeo. I know it's insane, I know it's impossible, but I love you." "I love you too," he whispered, the words feeling like both salvation and damnation. "God help me, I love you too." They made their plans in whispers, deciding to leave in 3 nights during the new moon, when both their kinds would be at their weakest. Romeo would steal money from his father's accounts. Juliet would gather supplies. They would meet at the cemetery at midnight and drive north until they reached safety. But secrets have a way of revealing themselves, especially in a city built on blood and betrayal. Tybalt had been watching his cousin, noting her distracted behaviour and frequent absences. On the night before their planned escape, he followed her scent to the cemetery and witnessed their reunion from the shadows. His howl of rage shattered the night air. "Traitor!" he snarled, his form already shifting as he bounded toward them. "You betray your own blood for a leech!" Romeo pushed Juliet behind him, his fangs extending as his vampire nature responded to the threat. "Tybalt, wait!" But the werewolf was beyond reason, his wolf consumed by fury at the perceived betrayal. He launched himself at Romeo with claws extended, aiming for the vampire's throat. The fight was brutal and swift. Romeo tried to defend himself without seriously harming Juliet's cousin, but Tybalt fought with the savage intensity of a betrayed alpha. Claws raked across Romeo's chest, tearing through his shirt and leaving deep gouges that wept black blood. "Stop!" Juliet screamed, her own transformation beginning. "Tybalt, please!" But her cousin was lost to rage. He pinned Romeo to the ground, claws at his throat. "I should have known! The way you've been acting, the lies, you've been consorting with our enemies." "He's not our enemy." Juliet's voice was changing, becoming deeper as her wolf fought for dominance. "I love him." "Love?" Tybalt's laugh was more snarl than sound. "You can't love a dead thing, cousin. Let me put this corpse back in the ground where it belongs." Romeo's survival instincts finally kicked in. As Tybalt raised his claws for a killing blow, the vampire's hand shot out, silver blade appearing as if from nowhere. The blessed metal slid between the werewolf's ribs, finding his heart with surgical precision. Tybalt's eyes widened in shock, his form beginning to shift back to human as death claimed him. "Juliet," he whispered, blood frothing at his lips. "I was protecting—" He collapsed, his body returning fully to human form as his life ebbed away. "No!" Juliet's scream was pure anguish, her wolf form exploding outward as grief and rage consumed her. She fell to her knees beside her cousin's body, her howl echoing across the cemetery like a funeral dirge. Romeo staggered backward, the silver blade falling from nerveless fingers. "Juliet, I'm sorry, I didn't mean he was going to kill me." But she wasn't listening. Her wolf had taken over, and when she looked at him, her eyes held only pain and fury. "You killed him!" she snarled, her voice barely human. "You killed my family!" "He gave me no choice." "There's always a choice." She was fully wolf now, silver fur bristling with rage. "You chose to save yourself instead of finding another way." "What other way?" He would have torn my throat out. "Then maybe you should have let him." The words hung in the air like a curse, and Romeo felt something die inside his chest. Juliet's wolf form began to pace, torn between grief and fury, love and loyalty. I can't do this. I can't choose you over my blood. Juliet, please. Go." Her voice was breaking, the wolf and human warring within her. "Go before I do something we'll both regret." Romeo took a step toward her, but she bared her fangs in warning. "I said go." With a last look at the woman he loved and the man he'd killed, Romeo fled into the night, leaving Juliet alone with her grief and her cousin's cooling corpse. The discovery of Tybalt's body in the cemetery sent both clans into a frenzy. The Capulets howled for vengeance, while the Montagues prepared for war. Lord Capulet, mad with grief over his nephew's death, declared that any vampire found in their territory would be killed on sight. Romeo's father, learning of his son's involvement, made his own decree. Romeo was banished from Montague territory until the heat died down. "You've brought shame on our house," Lord Montague said coldly. "One dead dog isn't worth starting a war." "He wasn't just a dog," Romeo protested. "He was her cousin. He was protecting his family. And you were protecting yourself. That's what vampires do. We survive." His father's eyes were like chips of ice. "You'll go to our safe house upstate. Stay there until I send for you." Romeo found himself exiled to a crumbling mansion in the mountains, alone with his guilt and his grief. He tried calling Juliet, but her phone went straight to voicemail. He sent letters that went unanswered. As days turned to weeks, he began to understand that he had lost her forever. Meanwhile, Juliet was drowning in her own despair. Her father, seeking to end the violence and secure his pack's future, announced her engagement to Paris Aeschylus, the neutral pack leader's son. The same match that had been planned for her dead cousin Rosaline. "I won't do it," Juliet told her father, but Lord Capulet's word was law. "You will, and you'll be grateful for the opportunity," he growled. "Paris is strong, his bloodline is pure, and his pack's neutrality will protect us from vampire retaliation. The wedding is in 3 days. Desperate, Juliet sought out Friar Lawrence, an old priest who served the neutral territory and was rumoured to practice the old magics. She found him in his herb garden behind the abandoned church, tending to plants that grew nowhere else in the poisoned city. "Child," the old man said, looking up from his work, "you carry the scent of sorrow." "Father Lawrence, I need your help." Juliet fell to her knees before him. My father wants to marry me to Paris, but I can't. I won't. The priest studied her with ancient eyes. There are rumours about you, young Capulet. They say you've been seen with a vampire. Juliet's breath caught. You know, I know many things. I know that love doesn't recognise the boundaries we set for it. I also know that some boundaries exist for good reason. He helped her to her feet. Tell me what you need. A way out. A way to avoid this marriage without bringing more war to my family. Friar Lawrence was quiet for a long moment, then moved to a cabinet filled with bottles and vials. There is something. An old potion from the time before the clans were enemies. It will make you appear dead. No heartbeat, no breath, cold to the touch. Even your father's enhanced senses won't detect life in you. How long would it last? 48 hours. Long enough for them to prepare your funeral, to lay you to rest in the family crypt. He handed her a small vial filled with dark liquid. But child, this is dangerous magic. If something goes wrong. I'll take the risk. Juliet clutched the vial like a lifeline. Can you get word to Romeo? Tell him what I'm planning. I'll try, but the roads north are watched. It may take time for my message to reach him. Juliet nodded, already planning. I'll take the potion tomorrow night after the wedding preparations are complete. When I wake in the crypt, Romeo and I can flee together. And if he doesn't come? Then I'll find another way. But I won't marry Paris, and I won't live without Romeo. She kissed the old priest's cheek. Thank you, Father. The next evening, as her family prepared for the wedding feast, Juliet stood in her room holding the vial. Through her window she could see the blood moon rising again, exactly 1 month since she'd first met Romeo on the bridge. For love, she whispered and drank the potion in one gulp. The effect was immediate. Her heart stuttered and stopped, her breathing ceased and cold spread through her limbs like ice water. She had just enough time to lie down on her bed before the darkness claimed her. Her nurse found her the next morning, apparently dead in her wedding dress. The pack's howls of grief echoed across the city as Lord Capulet prepared to bury his only daughter. But Friar Lawrence's message never reached Romeo. The messenger, a young neutral werewolf, was killed by vampire patrols before he could reach the mountain's safe house. All Romeo knew was what he heard on the news, that Juliet Capulet was dead, apparently from a broken heart over her cousin's death and her forced engagement. Mad with grief, Romeo broke into a medical supply warehouse and stole a vial of concentrated silver nitrate. A poison that would kill even a vampire. If Juliet was dead, he saw no reason to continue existing without her. He arrived at the Capulet family crypt just as the funeral procession was ending. Hidden in the shadows, he watched as they sealed his beloved in the stone tomb, her family's howls of mourning tearing at his dead heart. When the mourners finally left, Romeo broke the seal and entered the crypt. Juliet lay on a stone bier dressed in white silk, looking like a sleeping angel. Her skin was pale and cold, her lips blue, all the signs of death that his vampire senses confirmed. "My love," he whispered, kneeling beside her. "I'm sorry I failed you. I'm sorry I killed Tybalt. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to find another way." He pulled out the vial of silver nitrate, holding it up to catch the moonlight streaming through the crypt's windows. "But I won't live in a world without you. If death is the only way we can be together, then so be it." Romeo lifted the vial to his lips, and Juliet's eyes snapped open. "Romeo!" Her voice was weak, confused. The potion was wearing off, her heart beginning to beat again. "What are you doing here? What is that?" "Juliet!" Romeo dropped the vial, which shattered on the stone floor, its contents spreading in a silver pool. "You're alive!" "But how?" "Friar Lawrence gave me a potion. I was supposed to appear dead so we could escape together." She struggled to sit up, her body still sluggish from the drug. "Didn't you get his message?" "No message came." Romeo pulled her into his arms, hardly daring to believe she was real. "I thought you were dead. I thought I'd lost you forever." "Never," Juliet whispered, clinging to him. "I told you, I'd rather die than live without you." They held each other in the moonlit crypt, surrounded by the bones of their ancestors, vampire and werewolf united in love if not in death. But their reunion was short-lived. "Well, well," came a cold voice from the crypt entrance. "How touching." They turned to see Paris Aeschylus standing in the doorway, his neutral pack status allowing him to enter Capulet territory unchallenged. Behind him stood several of his wolves, their eyes glowing in the darkness. "Paris," Juliet said, moving protectively in front of Romeo. "What are you doing here?" "Paying my respects to my dead bride," Paris said with a cruel smile. "Imagine my surprise to find her very much alive and consorting with the vampire who killed her cousin." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Paris's form began to shift, muscles bulging as his wolf fought for dominance. "You faked your death to avoid marrying me. You dishonoured both our families with this charade." "The engagement was arranged without my consent," Juliet said, her own wolf beginning to stir. "I owe you nothing." "You owe me everything," Paris snarled. "Your father promised you to me as payment for my pack's protection. Without that alliance, the Capulets are vulnerable to vampire attack." "Then maybe it's time for the old ways to die," Romeo said, stepping beside Juliet. "Maybe it's time for peace instead of protection rackets." Paris laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Peace? Between vampires and werewolves? You're more naive than I thought, bloodsucker." The neutral pack leader's transformation completed, leaving a massive grey wolf where the man had been. His pack followed suit, surrounding the young lovers in the confines of the crypt. "I'll make you a deal," Paris growled, his voice distorted by his wolf form. "Give me the girl and I'll let you leave with your unlife intact." "Never," Romeo said, his fangs extending. "Then you'll both die here among the bones of your ancestors." Paris tensed to spring. "How poetic!" The battle was swift and brutal. Romeo's vampire speed and strength were formidable, but he was outnumbered 5-1. Juliet fought beside him, her wolf form silver lightning in the moonlit crypt, but even together they couldn't match the neutral pack's coordinated assault. Romeo took a massive claw across his chest, black blood spraying across the ancient stones. Juliet's anguished howl echoed off the walls as she saw him fall. In her rage, her wolf grew larger, stronger, alpha power flooding through her as she tore into Paris's pack. But there were too many of them. A massive brown wolf, Paris's beta, caught Juliet from behind, his jaws closing around her throat. She shifted back to human form, blood streaming from the wound. "Stop!" Romeo struggled to his feet, silver blade appearing in his hand. "Let her go, and I'll come quietly." "Too late for bargains," Paris snarled. But as he moved to deliver the killing blow to Juliet, Romeo's blade found its mark, sliding between the neutral alpha's ribs with deadly precision. Paris's eyes widened in shock as silver burned through his heart. He collapsed, his form shifting back to human as death claimed him. The remaining wolves, leaderless and confused, hesitated just long enough for Romeo to gather Juliet in his arms. She was dying, the wound in her throat too severe for even werewolf healing to repair. "Romeo," she whispered, blood frothing at her lips. I can't heal this." "Don't talk," he said desperately. "Save your strength." "No." Her hand found his cheek, fingers already growing cold. "Listen to me. I don't regret any of it. Not meeting you, not loving you, not dying for you. You're not going to die." But even as he said it, Romeo could smell death approaching, could see the light fading from her eyes. "I am." Juliet's voice was growing weaker. "But maybe our love will mean something. Maybe someone will remember that a vampire and a werewolf chose love over hate. Juliet, please." "I love you," she whispered, and then she was gone, her body going limp in his arms. Romeo held her as the sun began to rise, painting the crypt in shades of gold and red. Around them, the bodies of their enemies lay scattered, but their victory felt hollow. What was the point of winning if they couldn't be together? He looked at the shattered vial of silver nitrate, its contents spread across the stone floor. Not enough left to kill him, but perhaps... Romeo bit into his own wrist, letting his vampire blood flow freely. Then he pressed the wound to Juliet's lips, forcing the dark liquid down her throat. "If you can't live," he whispered, "then maybe you can be undead. Maybe we can find a way to be monsters together." For a moment, nothing happened. Then Juliet's eyes snapped open, glowing with an inner fire that was neither vampire red nor werewolf gold, but something entirely new. Her canine teeth had sharpened into fangs, but when she snarled, the sound was pure wolf. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice carrying harmonics that shouldn't have been possible. "I don't know," Romeo admitted, "but you're alive." "Sort of." Juliet sat up, testing her new form. She could feel the vampire blood burning through her veins, but her wolf was still there, changed but not destroyed. "I'm both," she realised. "Vampire and werewolf. Is that possible? It shouldn't be." She looked at her hands, watching claws extend and retract at will. But here we are. They heard voices approaching, the Capulet pack, drawn by the sounds of battle. Romeo helped Juliet to her feet, both of them swaying from their ordeal. "We have to go," he said. "If they find us here with Paris's body..." "They'll kill us both," Juliet agreed. "But where can we run? I'm an abomination now, neither vampire nor werewolf." "Then we'll be abominations together." Romeo took her hand, leading her toward the crypt's back entrance. "North, like we planned. Maybe we'll find others like us, or maybe we'll make our own way." As they fled into the dawn, leaving behind the bodies and the blood and the centuries of hatred, neither of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows. Friar Lawrence stepped into the crypt, surveying the carnage with ancient eyes. "So it begins," he murmured, pulling out a cell phone and dialing a number that hadn't been used in decades. "Yes, it's me. The prophecy is fulfilled. The hybrid has been born." On the other end of the line, a voice like winter wind responded, "And the others?" "We'll follow in time. Love always finds a way." The old priest looked toward the crypt entrance, where Romeo and Juliet had disappeared into the morning light. Even in a world of monsters, love finds a way. Miles away, racing through the abandoned industrial district in a stolen car, Romeo and Juliet felt the sun on their faces for the first time as equals. Both creatures of the night, both touched by darkness, but both choosing light. Behind them, Verona City burned with the fires of renewed war as the clans discovered the bodies in the crypt. But ahead lay possibility, the chance to write a new story where love conquered hate, where monsters could choose to be more than their nature demanded. In the rearview mirror, the blood moon finally set, giving way to a new dawn that belonged to neither vampire nor werewolf, but to something entirely new, something born of love and sacrifice, of choice and change. The age of hybrids had begun. I very much hope you enjoyed this story. Sweet dreams and good night.